What up, Jippers? LPlays back once again for another No Man's Sky Next speculation video, and it has been a while. There are some very interesting things that I want to talk about today that have been found in the game data, in the game files of the No Man's Sky Next update. So this is new stuff that has appeared in the data, in the metadata, in the files for the game since the next update dropped. They weren't in there before, and they're very, very interesting. Now, of course, this could be stuff that's in there that was being worked on and now has been canned and won't ever happen and won't be worked on. But I do want to talk about it because it's very interesting to me. And you guys know, I love to think about what could happen. I love to theorize. I love to speculate. And this gives me something very, very exciting that could potentially be coming in the future for No Man's Sky in another update or as another drop, as a patch. And before we get into it and why I'm excited about it and what I think about it, I'm just going to lay out exactly what has been found so you know what we're doing here in this video. So there are two exciting things that have been found, and these were found by Raidrod TV. He was the one that told me about these. Most of you will know Raidrod is a fantastic modder. He's worked on the Overhaul mod. He's worked on a whole load of other mods. He does some really fantastic stuff with the game, restoring stuff that's hidden in the files that wasn't actually implemented or finished, and working to try and realize that E3 trailer type vision of the game, as well as adding in a load of cool stuff from his own mind and his own creativity. So that's kind of what he does. That's his background. Of course, as part of that, he spends a lot of time digging through all of the data, all of the game files in No Man's Sky, and these are the new things he's found in those files since the next update dropped. And those are a folder titled Pipeline Deferred VR, and also some code for a giant snake that seems to have the same properties, the same characteristics coded into it as the biological horrors. So what I'm talking about there is the burrowing mechanic, the idea of it burrowing out of the ground, emerging from the ground, and popping up to attack players. Now, of course, straight away, those two things you're thinking, what? VR and the giant freaking snake. There's no in-game asset or model that he's been able to find so far, at least. But I think most of us at this point in the history of No Man's Sky, when we think about a giant snake, are thinking about one particular creature, one huge creature that was showcased, that was shown, that was presented in those early trailers for the game before it launched. The giant freaking sand snake on that amazing, incredible desert planet that everybody was excited to see, that everybody wanted, and of course that never actually made it into the game and still hasn't made it into the game as far as we know with the next update. So that is very much what I think this is, and I'm going to talk about that a little bit more, but first I want to talk about the VR folder. The first thing that's really interesting about this is the title of the folder itself, Pipeline Deferred VR. I would assume that VR, a folder named VR in the pipeline that has been deferred, is exactly what this talks about. You don't have to speculate too much to assume that's what this means. There's a folder in the game files. It appears to be a folder where they've stored some of the work, some of the features that they're going to be working on as a roadmap, as a future pipeline for content that they want to release to the game. It's marked as deferred, which of course suggests that it has been pushed back. Maybe it was something they wanted to add into next, but they worked on it and they weren't quite able to get it how they wanted, so they've pushed it back a little bit. It's still in the pipeline under this deferred category. It's not been removed. It hasn't been scrapped. It hasn't got any marker that says this has been canned and we will never do this. So that's kind of the starting point, the assumption for this video. These two new things that are in the game files, they're really there. You can go and look into it and find it yourself. And as far as I can tell, that would suggest to me that this is stuff they're going to be giving us. We're going to get this in a future update, or at the very least, they're going to be continuing to work on it. Now, VR, of course, is something we know for absolute certain that they have toyed around with, they have spoken about. Before the game launched, we know they were actually testing VR. If I remember correctly, Sean Murray, way back in the day before the launch of No Man's Sky, had mentioned that they had done some demo testing, some early work to kind of trial No Man's Sky with VR, but at the time, they didn't feel the technology for VR was where it needed to be. It still felt a little bit gimmicky. Of course, VR has come a long way since then. I'm sure we've still got a very long way to go before it's fully realized and we're all living in a Ready Player One world, but it's definitely come on a long way since the time when they would have been doing that initial testing. And the fact that they were doing that initial testing obviously suggests that it was something they were interested in at the very least. So seeing a folder in here now under this pipeline category in the game files, this is new stuff that wasn't in the game data, wasn't in the files before. That definitely seems to me like this is something they've been toying with, or at least thinking about working on for a future update or a future patch. It could have even been something they were trying and testing out a bit before Next dropped. It's in the files now. So objectively, what have we actually got? We've got this folder called Pipeline Deferred VR. We know it's in there, we know it's real, we don't know what's inside it, we don't know what they've actually been testing or doing or how it might work or what a VR mode in No Man's Sky would look like, but we do know there's something in the files relating to VR right now. We also know there's some code relating to the giant snake right now. So that's the facts, that's the objective part, that's the basis for this video, that's why I wanted to make this, why I want to talk about it. And now of course I want to just dig into a bit more of the speculation side of things, my theories, my thoughts on it. So let's do that right now. Anyone that's been with my channel for a long time will know that for Next, one of my big predictions, and even before Next with the Atlas Rises update, right back to when I first started playing the game, I've always believed that that E3 trailer vision, that kind of stuff that we saw in those trailers is what they've been working towards. Of course, the vision, the goal, the aims, and the things and features that they want to add to the game, that's going to have evolved over time. It's never going to be exactly that. They're going to have changed things. Multiplayer is a huge example of that. That seems to have been driven by community feedback. We've got so many other improvements, which in my mind add things that are much more than what was ever originally talked about, and things that are better than some of the stuff we saw in the trailers. There are still things I'd like to see from those trailers that aren't there, particularly some of the creature types, the snake that we're going to talk about in a minute, the giant freaking Diplo from the trailers that at this point is just iconic, and of course the really smooth, awesome looking shark. We've got other creatures, we've got really cool Diplos, even better ones now that Next has dropped, and animal behavior and all of that kind of stuff, scale, terrain, planets, missions, exocraft. So many other things have been added, so many cool things have been added, but some of those early creatures have always been things that I have believed would eventually come to the game. And I do still have that belief. I do still think at some point we are gonna see the Diplo, the Rhino, the Shark, and the giant snake coming to the game in a future update. What's really interesting about this is there's now evidence that some sort of reference to that some sort of giant snake has been at least worked on, tested, toyed with, or thrown around as an idea and made its way into the game data. It's not something we can see in the game right now, it's something that's in the pipeline. I do genuinely believe we are going to see the freaking giant snake that we saw in the trailer on that desert planet. And what's super interesting about the snake particularly is some of the recent interviews that came out when Next dropped. We did of course have the Kotaku interview where Sean talked about the giant snake from the trailer. He mentioned things like they did some testing with it, it was so overpowered, players wouldn't actually enjoy it, so that's why it never really got picked up and worked on, that's why it was never really added to the game. I think that's a bit of a white lie. I think if that was the case, there would be no reason for it to be in the game now as something new, as a new piece of code that wasn't ever there before Next. At the very least, they had revisited that and they were trying it out or doing some more testing with it before Next. And my suspicion is that that kind of interview, you know, when they say things like that, the snake's not there, it didn't work, we're not going to add it. I don't think that means it's not coming. I think it's right now where we are, they haven't got that giant freaking snake into the game in a meaningful way that they think works and is polished enough to be in the product today. So that's what I think that interview is about. It's that managing expectation. It was a bit of addressing some of the stuff that never made it into the game. But I remember just seeing that and thinking that's such a weird thing for them to come out and talk about now at this point. You know, they could have been way more general. They could have said some of that stuff that we demoed in a really, really early trailer before we'd ever really gone through actual testing and implementation and trying that stuff out in the game didn't work out. So so it never got added. The fact that they called out the giant snake, I was like, that's weird. Why did they talk about that thing specifically? Why didn't they just reference some of those early trailers and explain, we tried some stuff, there was some stuff that we thought was cool back then that never really panned out. And I do kind of think that a bit of that is because they've been toying around with this giant snake again recently. You might see this giant freaking sand snake that we saw in those trailers coming to the game, or at least something similar in one of the updates that we're going to be getting soon or later or at some point in the future after next. So that's kind of my view on it. I think that's coming. I think the reason they talked about that specifically in this interview is because it's something very fresh and recent in their mind. Something they've been testing out, something they've been playing around with, they haven't quite got right yet, but that's work they've been doing recently while they were preparing next. So that's kind of the angle I'm approaching this at. I think they've been toying around with that. I think we might see it. And what's really interesting from talking to Ray is that it seems like they've been trying out the same sort of mechanic that we've now got with the Xenomorphs, with the biological horrors, those freaking terrifying things that burst out of the ground when you touch the whispering eggs and kill you. People have loved that. They have really loved that. It's been like the subject of loads of Twitter stories that have completely blown up. Loads of pictures. People are using it as their thumbnails. That scary, dangerous creature is something that people really like. And I think the idea of having more stuff like that in the game is very freaking exciting. There could be a point in No Man's Sky where there are genuinely terrifying creatures out there, like the Xenomorphs, but bigger, scarier. Things that we might not even be able to kill unless we were in like groups, you know. Right now we know we've got 4-player co-op. Some of the tweets that came out just before Next dropped seem to hint at the fact that they might be expanding on that in the future. You know, when Sean tweeted that right now at the launch of No Man's Sky Next, the game is going to be 4-player co-op. And that wording, you know, right now at launch, it's going to be 4-player, to me seems like they're hinting at we're going to be trying to build on that. We're going to be trying to expand on that. I imagine that's not a controversial thing to say. I think most people know that right now we've got 16-player lobbies. Only 4 of those players can be visible as a player model. I have to believe that they don't want the orbs to be there forever. You know, they've got to be thinking longer term, we would like to have 16-player models, fully visible, fully animated, and able to play together properly. And if we get to that point, it would make sense to have bigger enemies, scarier things that you can't just kill with a couple of boltcaster bolts, that you can't just shoot a plasma grenade at and be safe from. Something like a huge boss-type creature, this giant freaking snake that has those same mechanics as the Xenomorph, you know, burrowing out of the ground in the desert, just like in those trailers, popping out like something out of freaking Tremors the movie or something like that, where you'd have to have a group of you all working together to try and kill it because it would be genuinely terrifying. So all of that kind of coming together to me is giving me a really exciting idea of what could potentially be coming in the future for No Man's Sky Next. Bigger creatures, the snake specifically being added to the game, and that being an overpowered creature, that being something genuinely terrifying that if you see on your own only really gives you 2 options: die or run. You know, the kind of creature that would actually scare you and make you think, wow, I need to come back here with a team, with a co-op squad, with a group of people to try and take this beast down. That would be crazy. That would be exciting. That would be something we don't have in the game right now that would still fit very much with the feel of the game. We know it's not going to be a heavily PvP focused experience. That is clearly just not the way they want to take No Man's Sky, but having something that you work together in a team to defeat definitely fits more to me with where the game is going and has always been going. You know, that community aspect, working together, the idea that when you meet another player, you know, when you do find someone or when a random traveler joins your game, it makes more sense for you to squad up and have fun and interesting memories together where you work together to achieve something, to do something, and to have fun rather than just trying to kill each other straight away. And if you've got more bigger, scarier, terrifying things to fight in the game, I think there's much more chance of that being the reality for the multiplayer side of things. A random player jumps into your game and the first thought's not going to be, oh, let's see if I can kill them. It's going to be, oh, now there's a couple of us, we can go and do one of these huge giant snakes or kill one of these Goliath creatures. Something like that would be awesome. I think it fits really well with where the game is going and has always been going, and it's definitely something I would personally love to see. So that's kind of my thoughts on this giant snake code that's been found in the file. I hope that's something they're still working on, or at least they're going to be working on similar stuff to that in the future. This idea of a big scary enemy creature that's actually terrifying, that's huge, ginormous, that you wouldn't want to fight on your own, but that with working together, maybe as a community event, maybe just as your co-op squad, would give you a really fun and challenging objective to go and try and achieve in your little team. I feel like that would be awesome, and I hope that's what this is and where this is leading to. Of course, I would love to know what you think about that. Do you believe that this is something they were just testing and they've scrapped and we'll never see again? Or do you think that we might actually see this come into the game? Drop a comment, let me know what you think about it. Is there anything else specifically from the trailers that you would love to see being added to the game, or anything else in this sort of theme that you think would be really cool? And then of course we've got VR. I've always said that I do think VR is going to be coming, and for those that know about Waking Titan, the ARG that went alongside No Man's Sky and will hopefully come back again in the future, for the last phase of that before No Man's Sky Next dropped, there was a company, a fictional company, science fiction story company as part of that lore, as part of the ARG, called Ware. And the way that was spelled, the logo for that, was so obviously a clue to VR. It literally spelled out VR. Like, that was the name of the company. A lot of people at the time were just saying it's lore and story. It doesn't actually mean they're going to be adding VR at any point. I wasn't really convinced of that. Yes, it was lore and story for that phase of the ARG, but I don't think the name was an accident, and if it was an accident, I would be so surprised. They must have known, you know, Allison Smith, the company that handled the ARG, they worked with Hello Games on that, they know what they're doing. If they call something VR, people are gonna make that leap. People are gonna think VR. That's what the ARG does, you know, it gets us all turning into little mini detectives, trying to figure stuff out, trying to think about what it all means, and something that blatant, that in your face, was obviously gonna get people thinking, wow, this is very clearly a theme, a reference to VR in the gaming world. So I do think VR is coming. I always did think VR is coming. I still think VR is coming. This hasn't really changed that, but the fact that there's now a folder in there called Pipeline Deferred VR, to me, almost makes it a no-brainer. They are working on VR, or at the very least, they've been testing and toying with VR as something they want to add to the game. We also know there is an ambient mode that has been discovered on the PC version of the game, almost like a debug type mode where you can just kind of go into like an unlimited camera view to just look around on a planet. Something like that would be perfect for VR. I don't think the entire game in VR would work particularly well, but being able to hop into VR mode on a super stunning planet and just kind of wander around a bit and take in the surroundings in VR, really being immersed in it, really seeing that world, would just be an experience that you can't get in any other game, in any other VR experience right now. And I hope that does come to the game, at least in some shape or form. And now, more than ever, I definitely believe that is coming. So they're the two things that I wanted to talk about. Just a little bit of speculation. I've been missing it since Next drops. I've not had anything to dig my teeth into, to think about, to speculate about. This is definitely something to speculate about, or at the very least, something to show people, to talk about, and to say, what do you think about this? So yeah, I'd love to know what you think about it. Are you a believer? Do you think we're going to see giant snakes? Do you think we're going to see VR? And do you think that the Waking Titan reference to Ware, to VR, was exactly that, a reference to VR? I think it was. Some people don't. I don't know. What do you think? Let me know, and I will catch you in another video very soon. Take care, guys, and peace. Just want to give a huge shout out and thank you to every single one of my current Patreon supporters: Anarchy, Dale from the Atlas Hub, Vogia, David D, Dead D Reza, Kicker, Forgotten Stoner, Heath, Husband Vader, Jens, Jeremy J, Joanne's A, Good Handed, Lukash, Mac for a Day, Madeline J, Malin Dog, Mark F, Michael, Amras, Neil B, NTB, Okami, Ongrad, Autumn Long, Paul Lawson, Rasmus K, Legion 245, Shiroko Majelli, Sam W, The Golden Geck, The Portrait Dude, Todd C, Todd H, Ty the Blazer, UK Gamer 84, Vanilla, YO, and Ovind. Thank you for supporting me and believing in what I do. You guys are the best.